Angelina Jolie rarely walked around Los Angeles without accompaniment, and even more rarely entered places where she might be recognized. Today was one of those rare days when she decided to escape the spotlight and the noise of the crowd, simply to be alone with herself. The Royal Coffee Bar in the Silver Lake area seemed like the perfect place, small, cozy, but not too popular. It almost felt as if it had been abandoned by everyone's attention. This was important. She wasn't looking for special attention, she needed a place to rest from the endless race of projects, interviews, and public expectations. The Royal Coffee Bar was small, even tiny, one might say. Inside, there was silence, with soft and unobtrusive music playing in the corner, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air as if it were a living thing. Everything about it was designed to create an atmosphere of comfort. Yet, Angelina felt that something was off. She noticed how the ordinariness of the place, its simplicity and modesty, attracted her more than what usually remained beyond the scope of her public life. She stood at the counter and ordered a coffee. It was a latte, an ordinary choice for most. She didn't even think about why she had chosen it, as in most cafes she always liked lattes. But today was different. Even her thoughts couldn't overshadow the quiet that filled the cafe. There was no hustle and bustle, no one trying to prove anything or look important. Angelina sat down at a table by the window, from which she could see a small courtyard. The place seemed like many others, but to her, it was something new. And perhaps that newness was exactly what she wanted to escape into. She looked around the cafe. The walls were covered with old posters, some with faded colors, and the old wooden floors added a touch of old-fashioned charm. The tables were simple, without any excessive design, but somehow, this minimalism felt comfortable to her. Numerous books on small shelves on the walls created an atmosphere of solitude. There was no modern decor or latest fashion trend, just a simple place that invited rest. Her coffee was brought quickly, and she thanked the barista. Lifting the cup, she carefully sniffed the aroma. It was almost invisible, like a ghost of taste, giving no hint that it could be special. The coffee was slightly bitter, almost odorless, and beneath the milk, there was nothing that could catch her taste. She put the cup back on the table and paused to think. The drink wasn't bad, but it was empty. And that emptiness became her first impression. Glancing around the cafe, she realized that behind this tiny place there was more than just an unremarkable interior. It was created by people who sought to make the world around them simpler and cozier, but there was no real warmth here. And this coffee, which she held in her hands, became a metaphor for something larger, her own life, full of public meetings and obligations, but devoid of genuine feelings. She lifted the cup and took another sip. The taste hadn't changed. Then, unexpectedly, she felt a thought begin to grow inside her: why not change this place? Why not make it something more than just a cafe? And although this thought was, at first, a reaction to the coffee, she soon realized that behind it lay a much greater desire, to change not only the space around her but also her life. Angelina Jolie had never been one for impulsive decisions. But in that moment, in that cafe, something clicked inside her. The place she had just randomly chosen had now become a symbol of what she lacked in life. It was one of those rare moments when she could be a creator, not just an observer. She sat back in her chair, not in a hurry. Mentally, she was already starting to make plans. As strange as it was, she felt that the time for change had come. Perhaps she could even buy this cafe. After all, what could be easier than taking something she didn't like and making it better? The next day, Angelina returned to the Royal Coffee Bar. She couldn't explain why, but she felt drawn to it, despite the unremarkable taste of the coffee she had tried the day before. Something in this place stayed in her mind, like an ominous symbol of something unsaid, unsatisfied. She still felt the emptiness that the single sip had left behind, something that seemed simple and unremarkable but was, in fact, much more significant. When she entered the cafe again, the same silence surrounded her. She looked around, almost trying to find something new in this familiar place. The barista, who had seemed indifferent to her yesterday, now appeared to be part of this closed reality. She ordered a latte again, and, as before, her expectations were not met. The coffee was exactly the same, flavorless, without any distinct aroma, just liquid that couldn't overshadow the feeling of emptiness inside her. Angelina sat again at the same table by the window where she had sat the day before. She picked up the cup, slowly sniffed it, took a sip. The taste was the same. She set the cup back on the table and sighed softly, almost as if she didn't believe it herself. Why was she so disappointed? Was this place, this café, what she had been looking for? Or was the problem in her own perception, in her inner state? That same thought arose in her head again: what if I buy this place? What if I can make it different, better? But this time, she felt that the impulse was not as strong as it had been yesterday. Now she sensed that this decision was about something more. She didn't just want to change the café, she wanted to change her life. Perhaps it was a way to escape the inevitable expectations tied to her career, her social life, and her film career. Maybe she needed something simple, and most importantly, something that didn't depend on the opinions of others. But there were doubts. Angelina Jolie had never been a person who acted on a whim. She always thought through every step, calculated all the consequences. As much as she wanted to believe that this place could be the beginning of something new, she couldn't ignore reality. By buying the café, she would not only face a business she would need to manage but also the expectations. What would it mean for her? Just a hobby? Or an attempt to find a place for solitude and personal growth? These thoughts troubled her. Perhaps she would have pushed them aside if she had just put off the idea of buying. But something about this little café caught her attention. Maybe it was the simplicity, which she had lacked in her life, the absence of everything superfluous. In a world full of glamour and attention, she felt that here, at the Royal Coffee Bar, she could truly be herself. But why was she so drawn to this place? Angelina stayed at the café for almost 2 hours. During that time, she not only managed to sit alone, but also observed the people who came and went, the baristas working behind the counter, and the atmosphere that filled the place. She noticed how the girl at the register was watching her face with interest, perhaps trying to figure out if she was familiar. Angelina felt a sense of discomfort, as if she had been recognized. But then she decided it didn't matter. After all, she hadn't come here to be a star, but to find something more personal, more real. Getting up from her seat, she approached the barista and asked who owned the café. The barista, a bit surprised, replied that the owner was a local entrepreneur who had opened the place a couple of years ago. But the business hadn't taken off, and now he wanted to sell it. This didn't surprise her much. At some point, it had become obvious. The café didn't have that quality that usually attracts regular customers. Maybe this is the moment when I should step in, she thought. Angelina decided that she would talk to the owner after all. But her internal doubts continued to weigh on her, and this time, they didn't vanish as quickly as before. She felt her desire to change this corner of the world growing stronger, but along with it, anxiety began to rise. What if she was wrong? What if this was just another impulse she would realize too late? On her way out of the café, she stopped at the door and looked into the mirror that hung nearby. Her reflection was familiar, but this time it looked strange. Did she really need something that wasn't related to her career? Was she looking for a new purpose in life? Maybe yes, she thought, and stepped into the empty street. Angelina returned to Royal Coffee Bar the next day, but now, not just to spend time in silence. She was more determined than ever. The process of buying the café had become her new goal, but the more she delved into the details, the more she felt that it wasn't as simple as it had seemed at first glance. The owner of the café, Matt, turned out to be an ordinary middle-aged man. His face looked tired, as if he had long been disillusioned with this business, yet still clung to the idea. He told her that the café hadn't lived up to expectations and hadn't brought in the profit he had hoped for. Matt was honest, even too honest, when talking about his failure. His words were straightforward but cold, as if he no longer believed that the place could become successful. "This place has always been more of a dream for me than a reality," Matt said, crossing his arms over his chest. "But it seems reality was too harsh." Angelina listened to him, carefully following every word he said. She understood his disappointment, but at the same time, she felt that his lost hope only intensified her desire to change the place. Everything he described seemed like his own failure, but for her, it was something more. It was a chance for change, a chance for something personal and significant. But as soon as they began discussing the price, her resolve wavered a little. Matt was asking for an amount for the cafe that she couldn't easily afford. And although she was willing to invest her own money in the project, the financial reality turned out to be more complicated than she had expected. Every conversation with her financial advisors brought her back to the thought that she could do something less risky, something that wouldn't require such significant investments. Meanwhile, new concerns started to arise in her life. The press attention to her interest in the cafe didn't go unnoticed. Rumors spread that she might be ready to open her own business, or possibly even step away from her familiar public life. This was not only unexpected, it made her feel uneasy. She began to realize that by making this decision, she was stepping into the unknown. There were many moments during the deal process when she was overcome with fear. She doubted whether she was doing the right thing, but each time she returned to the cafe, she felt drawn to it like a magnet. There was something in this place that resonated with her soul, despite its flaws and decay. One day, after another visit to Matt, she decided to come to the cafe at a different time, in the evening. The atmosphere was completely different. A mist of light fog clung to the window, and inside, there were almost no people, just a few evening coffee lovers. It wasn't as crowded, and the light was soft, creating an intimate, cozy atmosphere. At that moment, one of the baristas, whom she had already chatted with a bit, approached her. Her name was Sophie. She was younger than Angelina, with bright eyes and a subtle, almost imperceptible smile. "I couldn't help but notice that you come here often," Sophie said. "Is everything okay?" Angelina held back her smile. This was another moment when she felt like she was being recognized, though she wasn't ready for it. She could have just answered that she was here to relax, but she didn't want to hide her intentions. Maybe in this place, she didn't need to be alone. Maybe she could become part of this world. "I think I'm going to buy this place," Angelina quietly replied. Sophie looked a bit surprised, but not scared. "Wow, that's something new for us. You know, we all just work here, but if this happens," she paused, as if thinking. Angelina felt her heart flutter. Sophie didn't seem like the type of person who expected such news. But there was something sincere in her eyes that made Angelina feel that there was something real here, something she had been missing in her life. "I know it's a risk," Angelina said. "But I think this is my chance to start something new. I want this cafe to be more than just another place for coffee. I want people to feel that there's something special here." Sophie smiled, as if she had heard something that made her feel part of something bigger. "I think it's going to be cool. We'd all like for this place to become something more." With these words, Angelina felt that her decision became a little easier. But despite the support, there were still many questions in her head. What if it doesn't work out? What if she ends up trapped by her own desire for change? But she couldn't turn back now. And maybe that was the key moment in her life. The decision she had made might not have been the easiest one, but it was a decision that gave her the chance to rediscover herself. The process of buying the cafe turned out to be more complicated and drawn out than Angelina had imagined. Every day, she became more aware that business wasn't just about romance and cozy little cafes where you can sit with a cup of coffee and reflect. It was a whole world with subtle nuances, where every decision could be decisive. Matt, the cafe owner, wasn't thrilled about the deal, but he was ready to walk away. He had struggled with Royal Coffee Bar for so long that by the time he met with Angelina, he didn't have the strength to fight for better terms. He even offered a discount but immediately made it clear that there was one major issue: the cafe was burdened with debts. "Do you understand, I've spent more on this place than it's worth?" Matt said as they discussed the terms of the deal. Suppliers, rent, tax debts. It all piled up. "You'll need to invest if you want this place to survive before you even get started." These words struck Angelina like a bolt out of the blue. She had been prepared for difficulties, but she hadn't expected the situation to be this dire. She spent several days consulting with financial experts, trying to understand how feasible it would be to revive the cafe and cover all the debts. Business consultants told her it could take several months, possibly even longer. However, the more she thought about it, the more she wanted to continue. It was no longer just a decision to buy, it had become a personal challenge. She couldn't back down, even if there were huge financial risks ahead. This was her chance to find meaning in something unrelated to her public life. "Are you sure this is what you want?" one of the consultants asked when they were discussing the project. "You can't just take a failing business and turn it around. It's going to be a long road." "I know," Angelina replied. "But this is exactly what I want. I feel like I need to find a place where I can be myself, where I can make a change. This cafe, it's my opportunity." She understood that her words weren't entirely rational, but at that moment, she didn't want to be rational. To her, this was more than business. It was a path to something that could become an important part of her life. Meanwhile, other problems began to emerge. A new competitor had entered the market, a cafe with a similar concept, and many customers started switching to it. Rumors about Angelina Jolie buying Royal Coffee Bar also spread quickly. Soon, journalists and paparazzi began showing up at the cafe, trying to learn more about her plans. When she visited the cafe again to speak with Matt, she noticed a group of photographers standing across the street, watching her. Her face was on the front pages of tabloids, and this time, she couldn't hide. People sitting at tables in the cafe watched her cautiously, and someone even asked if it was true that she was going to buy the place. She felt a brief sense of awkwardness, but then pushed the thoughts aside. This was her decision, and she couldn't let external circumstances change her course. "I'll buy this cafe, Matt. We'll make the deal," she said firmly. Matt, sitting behind the counter, just nodded. He knew this was an important step for her, and now, there was nothing left for him but to hand over the keys. The deal was made, and Angelina officially became the owner of Royal Coffee Bar. But with that came new challenges. The first few weeks were filled with chaos. She spent a lot of time in the offices of accountants and lawyers, going through documents, sorting out debts, and dealing with taxes. The staff working at the cafe were skeptical. Many didn't believe her business plan would work. They had gotten used to constant crises and couldn't believe anything could change. But Angelina didn't give up. She was involved in every aspect of the cafe's operations, from restoring the interior to selecting a new menu. She wasn't looking for easy solutions. First and foremost, she wanted the cafe to be a place where people would feel that it was more than just coffee, it was a philosophy. Sometimes, sitting at a table in her new cafe, she felt immense pressure, as though each day was a new challenge. Her head spun from numbers and plans, from constant meetings with consultants and lawyers. But when she heard the laughter of people sitting at tables or saw how happy customers were with the new design, she knew it was worth it. However, new problems were already on the horizon. The market was unpredictable, and she knew it was going to be a long road. This wasn't an easy start, and every mistake could be fatal for the business. But one thing was clear, she wasn't going to give up. She felt that this was her chance, and even if the path ahead was tough, she would keep moving forward. Months passed since Angelina bought Royal Coffee Bar. Despite all her efforts, the cafe was still on the brink of becoming unprofitable. Competition in the market was fierce, and many customers had already become loyal to the trendy new cafe across the street. But Angelina wasn't going to quit. She felt that this project had become more than just a business, it was personal. It was her chance to change not only the place but herself. She decided to completely transform the cafe, from the furniture to the menu, from the atmosphere to the marketing. Additionally, she started holding meetings with the team to work together to make the place special. On the first day after the renovations, the cafe looked completely different. The interior was modern yet cozy, with classic elements that gave the place a unique identity. Light fixtures, soft chairs, and live plants all created an atmosphere where people wanted to spend time. Instead of a dull menu, they offered something more unique: new coffee varieties, signature desserts, and fresh breakfast and dinner dishes. But despite all the improvements, the problems didn't disappear. The staff, despite the upgrades in the interior, didn't immediately embrace the changes. Many still doubted her ability to make this cafe successful. During one of the morning meetings, when Angelina was discussing the changes with the baristas and waiters, one of the senior employees, Tony, expressed his concerns. "I don't know, Angelina," Tony said, scratching his chin. "These changes sound great, but we've been working here for a long time. People are used to the old style, not what you're proposing. Are you sure this isn't too much?" Angelina listened to him carefully without interrupting. She understood his skepticism. Changes are always hard to accept, especially in a small team. "I understand your concerns, Tony," she replied calmly. "But we need to move forward. I believe we can be the best. This place can become not just a cafe, but something special for people." She felt that her words no longer sounded like empty promises. She genuinely believed in success despite all the difficulties. And though her voice was confident, inside, she was still anxious. Success wasn't guaranteed, and every day felt like a challenge. But with every step, she felt like she was not only changing the place but also herself. And despite the challenges, the changes began to bear fruit. Gradually, new customers started to appear in the cafe. The crowd that used to go to the neighboring cafe now started noticing Royal Coffee Bar. Its reputation grew thanks to the unique approach and fresh style. Soon, regular customers began to return, and that became the first real sign that her efforts weren't in vain. She couldn't help but notice how her life started changing. In the evenings, when she sat in her office, going over reports and charts, she felt that she wasn't just running a business, something more significant was happening every day. She wasn't alone in this project, her team was becoming part of her idea, part of her world. One day, while sitting at her desk, reviewing documents and thinking about the future of the cafe, Sophie approached her. "It will be okay, Angelina," she said with a light smile. "We're with you. We all believe that this place will get better. We're not just working here, we're becoming part of this project. This is our cafe." These words were simple, but for Angelina, they were an important moment. She realized she wasn't alone in this. Her team had started not just working but also believing in her idea. And when she looked at them, she felt her confidence growing. This project was becoming something bigger than just a business, it was becoming part of her life. That evening, as the first successes with customers became more apparent, Angelina stood by the window in her cafe, looking at the city in the evening. She felt as though the weight that had been on her shoulders was no longer there, and a new road lay ahead. Even though not everything was going smoothly, and there was still a lot of work to be done, she already felt like she had stepped into a new world. And this was only the beginning. Almost 6 months had passed since Angelina bought Royal Coffee Bar. She no longer felt the weight she had when she first started, and every day in the cafe now brought her joy. The staff had become her team, and the customers her friends. She saw how her small project was becoming part of the city's life, attracting more and more people who simply wanted to enjoy a cup of coffee in a cozy atmosphere. But she still felt that her journey wasn't finished, that there were new challenges and changes ahead. One day, while reviewing the morning sales reports, Angelina realized that she needed to move forward. The idea of a small cafe that she had tidied up, with its cozy atmosphere and delicious coffee, was great, but she could do more. Once this place had become stable, once she started feeling like the cafe was successful, the question arose, what next? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. Sophie entered, smiling, holding a cup of coffee. "You're here again," Angelina remarked. "Can't you relax for a couple of days?" "Well, I know you never rest," Sophie replied, setting the cup on the desk. "I thought you might be absorbed in your thoughts about the next step." "Am I wrong?" Angelina looked at her, tiredly rubbed her temples, but smiled. "You're right. I need to move forward. Everything in this cafe has fallen into place, but I feel like I can't stop. Have you ever thought about doing something beyond what we're doing here?" Sophie paused. She sat down on a chair opposite Angelina and looked at her. "We've already created something special. But what if the next step is expansion? We could open new cafes in other neighborhoods. It would be like a family, connected to Royal Coffee Bar, but in different parts of the city. We could start working with local coffee producers, collaborate with artists and musicians, make each place unique." Angelina thought for a moment. She had never considered it in this context. She was used to taking things step by step, dealing with each obstacle as it came. But the idea of creating a cafe network that would maintain the same cozy atmosphere and warmth, but in different parts of the city, appealed to her.